that was going to take in 122 countries, all 7 continents. We used the very latest technology.
And when he came round, I spoke to him and I was horrified. I'm like, I can't be married to that man any longer.
India is unlike anywhere else, and especially the traffic. But we have to first work, we had to make an adjustment.
I had to check that he wasn't dead because as he passed out, he hit his head directly and he was ashen grey. I wasn't sure that he was breathing. Thank you very much. Now, I do apologise. I do have notes because I'm getting a bit old these days and I can't remember what's what.
No, seriously, for 73, I think she looks fantastic.
So because we've had to cram our journey of 17 years into 20 minutes, I have made a few notes, so I apologise for using notes, but it'll be better for you.
Everyone can hear us okay? Yeah. Because this is my real accent. It's the only one I have. So we're going to blur through things. If you want to do some Q&A at the end, that would be fantastic, because jokes aside, we spent 30 hours just to come and chat to you guys, and we feel genuinely privileged. Look, it's absolutely freaking awesome to be up here talking to you guys about riding bikes. Alrighty, now be prepared. We're going to start slow.
Start off very slow. Very slow, in fact, it's already been mentioned, and people do find this a bit strange of how we first started our motorcycle journey. Here we are, very nice and young and full of fun. But it was in October 1997. I was at home. It was very late. And I received a phone call. Now, I'd been berating Simon. I was really annoyed at him. Doesn't take much, but I was really annoyed with him. He hadn't contacted me to let me know that he'd been safely on his journey and arrived at his friend's house. The man on the other end of the phone wasn't Simon, though. This guy said, "Are you Lisa Thomas?" "Yes." "It's Worcester Hospital here. Don't worry, your husband's been involved in a serious motorcycle accident, but he's okay." It was that one single phone call, that one evening, that actually changed our lives out of all recognition.
I'd actually been riding north to south, going for a meeting, and I'd been squashed by 2 cars. Literally in that moment, our lives turned around, because from the hospital, our lives literally collapsed around us. So we lost absolutely everything. Every credit card was maxed out. The only things we didn't lose was the house and the 2 bikes. We were this close to being on the verge of bankruptcy. The reality is, though, that one accident gave us a chance it forced us to sit back and go, okay, what are we doing with our lives? Do we want something a little bit more from our lives? And the simple answer was yes. I lost my career. I had no choice but to go forwards. That is a very sad-looking Lisa, because we had to sell the furniture, the TV. I mean, when I say we lost it all, I mean it went.
And now that is lacking humour. What a start to a talk. But I promise you, it does get better.
We got our lives back on track a little bit, and we started to plan what we thought was going to be an impossible motorcycle route. It is very dangerous, the ideas that come into your head at the weekend when there's no pressure. So Lisa, by the way, designs the route. I follow her. Now the great thing about that is that when it all goes horribly wrong, it's not my fault.
No. As a husband, it's always your fault. All right? Exactly.
So just to prove how old we are, when we sat down to design this incredible route, it was going to take in 122 countries, all 7 continents. We used the very latest technology. Now, some of you may not be familiar with this. They're called books. I know. And then Lisa had this thing called a map. And she put it on the wall and she drew this gigantic red line and said, we're going to go to all of those places.
That actually sat on the wall for about 6 years whilst I added elements in as I read my books and decided that we would go certain places, joining it all up with a red line. And actually, I look back now and that route has not really changed very much. A little bit here and there, but the most important thing is to have flexibility, but to also have a goal in mind as well. So knew that we were going to have to cross at one point a part of the Sahara. Now, the Sahara Desert, biggest desert in the whole wide world. And we had no sand riding experience whatsoever. So I thought, well, we'll go to our local beach. This is in England. Go to our local beach, and we rode up and down it 3 or 4 times. And I thought, well, that's it. We did all right there, didn't we?
How many of you guys enjoy heavy bikes on sand? Okay, perfect. So if you do, there will eventually be a medical condition to describe this urge. Honestly, we had never been off-road, we'd never ridden on sand, and we thought it was terrifying. And we described to a friend how terrifying the sand was. And we said, it's very wobbly. That was the length, that was the extent of our professionalism.
So we also tested our equipment, and we went to the deepest, darkest depths of the south of the UK and tested all of our equipment in my parents' garden. Thought that worked.
We just want to convey to you guys that before we set off, we had no off-road riding experience, and the only thing that matched our ignorance was our optimism. So one of the things we did do is we contacted a friend of a friend, and this guy's called Cy Pavey. He's done the Dakar Rally 8 times. Yeah, I mean, like, hi. Even today. We did 2 days off-road riding with this guy, and the amount we learnt was incredible, but it was very dangerous because at the end, we had so much confidence, so much false confidence. It's a very dangerous thing, thinking, okay, well now, I can stand on the foot pegs of my bike. I am ready for the world. Not so much.
So we started thinking about this in 1997, and we actually set off in 2003. And we actually set off to the massive crowd of 2 people, my parents, waving us off up the road late at night. We had wrapped ham and cheese sandwiches in some cling film, and we set off.
We only make light of this, because we've got lots of friends now who go off to these big journeys, but they all have social media, and they have 100 people waving them off, and they have crowds, and they have sponsors. The only sponsor we had was the guy that gave us the smile, and we left in the dark because social media didn't exist. But our plan was 18 months, 120 countries, 7 years. So the question you have to ask yourself is, how did 18 months turn into almost 18 years?
I know, I can tell you. Bet you can't guess. I put it down to Simon having the only GPS and not knowing how in hell to use it.
Okay, you have a choice. You can believe that shit or this one. My wife has the sense of direction of a toenail and gets lost in a supermarket. Take your pick. By the way, I've got the beer tokens. Look, okay, jokes aside, the best way we can try and share with you the scale and the size of our journey and what it's meant to us.
Yeah, we're a bit tired. So Africa, we found out, surprisingly, has quite a lot of sand.
And it's nothing like the beach in England.
It's nothing like our local beach at all. So it was just by chance that when we were just approaching to our first entry into the Sahara, that we met up with the Portuguese Dakar team. And we went off into the dunes at their suggestion, and we rode a few dunes, expecting them to go, wow, you guys, whew. But their chief riding instructor went very simply to us, you guys are going to die out there.
That's actually what he said. So it's not the confidence that we've been looking for. So we took his advice, we re-evaluated. When it comes to the Sahara, we were trying to cross the shortest section and to try and put that into scale. So the USA, we're talking about, well, our total distance so far is 507,000 miles. So again, that's 20 times around the Earth. Back to the Sahara, the shortest section was the equivalent of riding non-stop from the Canadian border to the Mexican border. In between, no roads, no fuel, no water, no villages, nothing. We did not have a backup crew. We did not know if we could carry enough fuel. At the time, I think we had approximately 80 litres of fuel. This bike had 3 fuel tanks. The riding was absolutely brutal. Every single day was 12 hours. We would try to stop as infrequently as possible because the sand was so deep and so thick that once you stopped, trying to get going again could be 5 minutes or it could be an hour. We just didn't have the experience. Every single night we would stop, and those nights we were so tired we wouldn't put the tent up. But again, those life experiences that we all look for, sleeping in a sleeping bag in the Sahara Desert as you watch 1,000 stars fly overhead is magical. That moment alone is one that you'll always be with you. This is the guy who said you're going to die. Again, not the motivational speaker. This is the very first day in the Sahara. And again, when I joke about trying to keep up with my wife, that was basically what I've been doing for 17 years. One of the things we had to take into account was dehydration. We were losing so much perspiration that 2 or 3 hours in, we'd have that battle between do I stop and take on fluid, and then you have the problem starting. If I don't stop, the cramps that were coming through our lower backs, hamstrings, calves, were just debilitating, and you'd fall off. But it was a constant battle. Towards the end of the Sahara Desert, and we somehow survived the Sahara, we now needed to cross into West Africa. We were looking at basically going into Ghana, Gambia, Senegal, and we'd always looked at crossing over to Africa's east coast and travelling down to South Africa. But one of the things you learn very quickly when you travel is your plans need to be flexible. The universe doesn't care what you hope was going to happen.
So, as Simon is saying, West Africa just proved very, very dangerous. I mean, the daily life, it was the terrain or politics or wildlife that were trying to kill you. And in Mali, we were navigating, I mean, it was cattle tracks, and it was over 50 degrees most of the time. So we were suffering severe dehydration the majority of the time and exhausted. So we were crossing into Casamance, from Casamance into Mali. And you think that after all that terrible terrain and extreme heat, that we would be, and dehydration, that we would be pleased to see this.
Yeah, there's a small problem with the universe. It hates us. Not really. We were happy to see this. But after this difficult, challenging ride, the only way to get across that was to do this. So our choice is, there are no bridges, there's no way of getting across. We have to put 200-300 kilo bikes into a boat. And I said to the young man who was selling me this, that is not a boat, he speaks French. That is not a boat, that is a tree with a hole in it. One of the other things you learn is no matter where in the world you go, you meet good people, you meet bad people, and then you meet salespeople. 2 nights before this happened, we got to a tiny village. It's not on a map. My wife's going, don't tell that story, so I'm going to. And we got there. They explained to us they'd never seen a white person. That was what was coming. No, we get everywhere. 43 people in a village camped around our tent and all night watched everything we did. No, I mean everything we did. So So I've got this guy saying, he said to me, we take big bikes across here every single day. I said to him in French, I don't believe you because your neighbours 2 nights ago used my ass as a television. Bearing in mind the jokes aside, this was truly terrifying. It was a turning point in our journey. We've been planning this journey and thinking about it and sacrificing for 5 years. If the bikes had gone over, that was it. The house we'd sold, the sacrifices we've made, our journey is stopping right there. And the walk back was going to be even longer because we weren't getting the bikes out.
So this guy was saying, my boat is good for a ton. And Simon's going, oh yeah, it's fine to me. Oh, it's fine. That's the last time I ever believed Simon in anything at all. They were so very unstable. I was the final item to go over. They left me to the end on purpose because had I gone across first, that was it. I was gone. I was turning around and going back.
It's a long walk.
So Africa, we learned, had a way of throwing a spanner in the works. But as Simon has said, with our type of travel, you have to learn to adapt. It being independent travellers, not reliant upon anybody else apart from ourselves. You do have that ability to be flexible. So after the Casamance and crossing into Mali time period that we had there with the boat, we were approaching the Nigerian border. Now, we'd already had to change our route because of Darfur. Now this was the Nigerian elections were happening. I think Simon mentioned it. They were actually killing people at the border with machetes, and 300 people were killed. At the border, we were attempting to cross. So it didn't really take much for us to change our minds and change our route.
So we did what any sensible person would do. We went back to Ghana, we found a bar, and we sat down and we started drinking. In that bar, the universe went, oh, I think we like you again. And as we were moaning, bearing in mind we're British, so we do 2 things very well. We stand in line and we moan a lot. This guy heard us moaning and he took sympathy on us. And he said, well, I've got to play. So what we did was we convinced this guy called Barry, who had been convicted of drug smuggling, so he couldn't fly over Angola. He said, meet me at the airport. It was Ghana International Airport. I'll fly you down. What he did mention is that it's a non-cargo bearing plane. So our job was to somehow stuff ourselves and our 2 bikes into a non-cargo bearing plane and convince him, because he said yes, well, we could strip the walls, the floor, the toilet, the tables. There was nothing inside the plane. Oh, and then the plane didn't take off. So then we had to fix the left engine and we couldn't get the bikes in. But the guy near the airport 5 crew had been playing volleyball for 6 months. They were so happy for something to do. As you can see, it was a flight we will never ever remember, and true to his words, he landed us on the Angola border, and our African adventure continued.
So this is 8 years after deciding to start our motorcycle journey. We arrived in South America.
Now, don't get me wrong, Africa had been absolutely brutal. We'd only lost a third of our body weight. But we'd also learned an awful lot about ourselves and what we were capable of as people and riders. And we knew at that point that we wanted to take on more extreme riding challenges. Now, I love my wife dearly, but she's not okay. She is absolutely relentless when she gets an idea in her head. And one of these we had found was a route through the Amazon jungle that had never been attempted on large capacity bikes. And so we decided that you'll see what we wanted to be the first.
Yeah, it was a pretty hard ride. We were going to ride the 820 kilometres, I think that works out right. 540 miles is about 20 kilometres. Down from the north of the Amazon, down to a city called Cortavelo. And do you know what? Along the way, it's such a surprise. No McDonald's, no Pizza Huts. I actually had to carry my own tea bags and a bit of extra food. I mean,
We're so British, we actually carried tea bags and biscuits. God save the Queen and all that. We also had to carry an additional 120 litres of fuel. That's 120 kilos. And by the way, spoiler, we still ran out of fuel before we got to where we needed to be. Our first challenge was finding a boat that would take us and our bikes the 4,000 kilometers up the Amazon River. That was our first challenge. It took us about a week to even find a boat that would allow us on board. And then from Manaus, our plan was to ride from Manaus this group down through the Amazon Jungle. It had been done before, but we thought we were ready for it. We had ropes, we had pulleys, we had a mechanism that would allow us to take our bikes across obstacles that we couldn't ride. Honestly, we had no idea what we were in for. This is the first day, the good stuff.
So on the second day, the first day was pretty hellish, but on the second day, we attempted to cross this one bridge. It was the worst bridge that we had seen so far. And its carcass, it just crumbled. Simon got up onto the bridge, the weight of his bike, it just fell away, and he fell from the bridge head first, and he was out cold for a long time. And I was
We
there.
told my parents 10 minutes, apparently it was 2.5 hours.
I was there, not able to do very much, trying to stop the bike from falling on top of him because it was still running and its wheels were going around and it was balancing. And I thought, if it falls on him, he is really dead. I had to check that he wasn't dead because as he passed out, he hit his head directly and he was ashen grey. I wasn't sure that he was breathing. So during that time, I kept myself busy. I checked he was alive. I didn't remove his helmet or anything. I stopped the bike from falling on him, got all the luggage off, and I waited for him to regain consciousness.
When I did come round, I knew things were bad. I was blinded in my left eye and probably paralysed on my left-hand side. So Lisa tells me that I did ride both bikes across. I have no memory of doing it. The problem was the pain would get so bad, at least 5 weeks amount a day, that I would just flat out. And the only way of me riding the bike or sitting on it was to take cable ties, and we cable tied my fingers to the handlebars and cable tied my leg to the bike. That meant that the bike fell over on the left, and I'd be underneath it. So Lisa would have to pull me out and bring my 1100 upright in knee-high mud. So when I say that she's the toughest, most badass woman I've ever met, I genuinely mean that. But interestingly, if it wasn't for my wife, I would not be here. I mean that genuinely.
So we actually suffered quite a few other sicknesses along the way as well. Now, these bugs, these accompanied us the whole route through the Amazon. Now, I think you're all right, but if any of you are a bit squeamish, look away now.
We did show this to Indian Bike Week, and they said, no, please put up a warning.
So we put up a warning. It's not that gruesome. I'm sure you've seen worse. We actually suffered with infected bites and trench foot. And the infected bites from those horrible little brown bugs that you saw, they would come along and they would lay eggs, and then a day or two later, I mean, they're fermented because of the 100% humidity, you actually have green pus coming out, and you squeeze it and the green pus would come out, and hopefully the egg along with it.
We are actually running a commercial tour to the Amazon next weekend. If you'd like to enroll, we'll take you to the process this evening.
And Simon, well, we were both bit by ticks, and they burrow deeply. But guys, just think about this. Simon had a tick burrowing where you never ever want a tick to burrow. Just think, there's no picture.
It was a really big tick.
There's no picture, don't worry.
Arguably, it was the most difficult 3 weeks of our lives. It was a total of 3,000 miles from the moment of the accident to getting to a hospital. Things got worse and worse. On the way to the hospital, Lisa contracted malaria. I had to do a roadside repair. The entire wiring loom of my bike died. The rear wheel bearing exploded. That got complicated. Then 600 miles or 1,000 kilometers west of Sao Paulo, the whole sensor finally died. When I finally got to the hospital, they began to explain why I was passing out and what the problem actually was.
So Simon had, this is 3 weeks earlier, they diagnosed him that he had actually broken his neck and it was dislocating at the same time. So he was sent straight into emergency surgery. Now, that was 13 hours I had to hang around and wait and see what the result was. A break like this is normally you become paraplegic, and obviously they want to distress and concern.
Tell them why you were annoyed by my surgery.
I was horrified. When he came out from surgery, now they had to go in through the front of his neck, so they had to go in through his front of his throat and move his voice box out of the way to be able to access the broken bones. And when he came round, I spoke to him and I was horrified. I'm like, I can't be married to that man any longer, because he sounded like a cross between Darth Vader and Barry White. His voice.
Oh my God, darling, are you okay? I'm so glad you survived. She said, what the? You can't sound like that. Awesome lady, again, the sympathy of a toenail.
Well, his family did actually think that that would be the end of our journey, but 3 weeks recuperation and we were back on the road again.
In 2009, we headed into Central Asia to ride and explore the famous Silk Road. It's interesting, the Silk Road isn't one road, it's a route, it's thousands of routes that date back over thousands of years. We expected a lot, and I still think to this day, the Silk Road, so we're talking about Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, Tajikistan, Afghanistan, we had planned to ride into Vladivostok, so eastern Russia, and then down the port, maybe just down to Asia.
Well, it only looks
But
about...
we couldn't get into China, we just couldn't afford to go in, so Lisa designed the longest shortcut in the world.
So I wanted to get down to Thailand. So you think, we're actually entering in Vladivostok and I want to get to Thailand. That's quite a quick route down. It's only about 4,000 kilometres, nice and fast. But no, we had to go all the way around China. And you imagine that border with China? It's actually quite a long, detailed detour.
This particular route was physically, but the riding was challenging. The temperatures were the coldest I've ever experienced. -31 was the coldest. So it was very nice to be in India, thank you very much. But the most challenging part was the logistics. So we were looking at 12 countries, we were looking at 12 very difficult to get visas, 24 international border crossings. Some of the visas started on the day you got them, others started in 3 months' time. Logistically, it was a nightmare. So I did my very best to help, and I just let Lisa do it all. Not joking.
He's he's really not joking. When it comes to documentation, etc., that's me. I have to do it all.
Really?
And
No, when she said shit like that, don't laugh, because you think it's okay.
Now, during this time, we've got more and more into our photography. I would hope that our riding, we weren't stressing about the riding as much as we used to. And so we had one camera, which we bought in South America, and we were enjoying taking the photographs an awful lot more. If you do go and visit our social media, you too can enjoy those photographs. But we began to fight. Would you believe it? We began to fight about the camera. I wanted it, he wanted it.
And by fight, all she means is I began to put up something in a fight, bearing in mind we both knew where it was going to go. Jokes aside, after 17 years on the road though, I learned that we needed 2 cameras like we needed 2 bikes. To this day, we've never actually needed 2 tents yet.
I've often wanted another tent. You imagine being with him, well, maybe you don't want to imagine being with him, but imagine being with him and he's not had a shower for like 2 weeks and we've been in the jungle and then you have to get into that tent with him.
Okay, this is not in the script. The last presentation we gave, somebody actually asked us, can I ask you a personal question? So you knew what was coming. You've been married for a long time. He said, yeah, it's been a while. What kind of contraception do you use when you're traveling? What's the best kind? And I said, the best kind of contraception we've ever used was Mongolia. And the guy said, what do you mean? I said, trust me, if you haven't got enough water to drink and you've not washed for 3 weeks, no matter how amorous you feel, all you want to do is cuddle. Everything else is too good. They asked the question, so I give the answer. But we were having no photographic experience at all. I'd never owned a camera. And we've now had 4 or 5 years to begin to get the idea of what photography could do, so we began to do this area justice.
So this was riding through the 6 stands of Central Asia, which I think Simon's gone through. I read it. Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, Tajikistan, Afghanistan, Uzbekistan, and Turkmenistan. Oof. And they were absolutely amazing countries. Every single one is different, but each one is just as spectacular. I mean, it would throw such an array of terrain at us. We'd ride deserts, we'd had shale-ridden mountainsides, we'd have, me taking a photograph of Simon there, we'd have at 4,500 meters, we'd travel for weeks on end. It was freezing. We had snowstorms, we had sleet storms, we had sandstorms, we had hailstorms, we had windstorms. Everything you can think of, the world at that time threw it at us. And we'd also go weeks on end, especially in Mongolia. We didn't see anyone. That was wonderful. I loved that.
We're going to finish up with a couple of little highlights because that's what they've asked us to do. A couple of little things that happen once you travel. I've got to take these off because I couldn't see you guys. The scariest point of the journey, truly, was the decision to start it. That was the most terrifying part. Everything else, you change course and you go along. But Mongolia, we were in the Gobi Desert. We hadn't seen anybody for 2 days. And we're basking in the glow of, we're adventure runners, we're in the Gobi Desert, we're in Mongolia, we're looking at the stars. It was about 5:30 in the afternoon, we were absolutely exhausted, we were running low on fuel provisions, so we got into the tent. And we've got our sleeping bags on, and we're almost asleep. And then without any warning, we hear the zip on the tent go. So we saw our boat turn around and we started looking down at our feet. And the next thing, the zip totally opens up, and then the inside of the zip opens up. And this guy that looks like a retarded version of Genghis Khan with no teeth, wearing animals, crawls into the tent, and the smell was worse. Now bear in mind, nomadic culture is how it is in Mongolia. Private ownership. I mean, we could go to any cup of tea. He was tired, he saw our tent, but the point is that we were there as British people, we're very polite. This guy that looked like Genghis Khan brought in the smell, and he just crawled on his hands and knees. And he made eye contact with both of us. I was a bit creeped out, to be honest. And then he led down right between the both of us. Within 2 seconds, he was asleep. Within 2 more minutes, he was snoring. And then he spent 45 minutes just farting. And then he got up, he kind of brushed himself down, he made eye contact again, and then he backed out. That is the kind of shit that you simply can't make up when you travel.
Mongolia, we were often asked about countries that we would head on back to. Mongolia is definitely one of those countries. It's spectacular. It's not exactly hard riding, but it's the length of time that you're out there in the middle of nowhere with nothing but yourselves and your own ability which to cope with repairs and flat tires, etc.
We're going to wrap this up. Does anybody recognise this particular piece of sand?
So
Go on.
I've got a little bit here, and I'm going to read it because we haven't made it up. It's true, and it's not just because we're here. I say now for our favourite country in the entire world. India! So
You guys are so glad.
Really, it's an incredible country. It is unlike anywhere else on Earth. You've got the textures, you've got the colours, you've got the foods, you've got the weather. I'd like to say you have the roads, but you've got the kind of roads that we like. It's a pleasure to be back here, and even though we're not on our motorcycles, we will come and visit again and bring our motorcycles once we have them returned to us. And we'll definitely come and say hi to you again.
2 last things we've got on the stage. So, first of all, our biggest adjustment with India was in our heads. India is unlike anywhere else, especially the traffic. So we had to first work out, we had to make an adjustment. India doesn't have traffic. You have a metal dance. And all that matters is in India it works. So we would be bumped 3 or 4 times a day off the road. And every single day, somebody would lean out of the window and they would yell those lovely words. How much cost? Guys, really, dream big, dream far, have a fantastic time, enjoy the rest. Thank you so much for giving us your time. And thank you to Golf Cinetran for allowing this to happen and being part of it. Guys, thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Wait, hold on. We have time for a couple of questions. So just in case you all have any questions from the audience, just put your hand in the air and we will come up to you. Yes, we have someone on here at front.
So you initially planned for like 18 months or 2 years, okay? And it's a regular part of the story where you kind of sell off all your assets, get that cash and hit the road, right? But then you hit like an accident. It's gonna suck money out, it's gonna suck time out. And then from there to 17 years, how does that pan out, what all? And
So the question is, how do you afford to stay on the road for 17 years? So before we left, once we made the decision to set out, we literally looked at every way of saving money. We didn't go out, we had no social life, we were renting a television. That got set back, so literally any money got saved towards the trip. Once we got on the road, we planned to do this crazy journey, this 122 countries in 18 months. But the minute we started traveling, we realized, no, that would be an insult to the privilege of traveling.
So we actually started off in the bank account from all the savings and everything, because we still had to live and have a house in the UK. And we actually went off with £20,000. That's what we left with. That's what we managed to save up. And then, of course, that doesn't last long when you're on the road on 2 motorcycles. Even though we do the cheapest way, we live in a tent. I do a lot of the catering, apart from when you're in countries like India and Thailand, where the food is much better, other than you catering. And we live as cheaply as we can on the road. But we then decided, instead of returning home, that we would continue. And then that's when the big decision had to come. We had our house, and we'd been renting it to people, and they were paying us a reasonable amount of money. Then we made the decision when we decided not to return home after the 18 months, and we sold it.
That was truly scary.
Big decision.
Because now we are properly homeless. There's no safety net to go back
Because
to.
at that point, Simon was in his late 30s, and I was in my early 40s. That's a big decision. It goes against everything that you're taught in England, especially. You must have a house, and you must save, and you must do this. And we were getting rid of all of that hard work that we had done over the previous 25 years.
So we ended up selling things in piecemeal. You hear a lot the day about people saying, I'm going to go travel the world. I've sold everything. And I'm thinking, that's just, but what if it doesn't work out for you? What if you don't like it? That to me seems crazy. We sold a lot, and then we simply sold things. And once everything had gone, we became very entrepreneurial. So between the internet, between giving talks, between calendars, between selling t-shirts, between doing anything that you can do to generate something.
But there still does come a point when you have to go, what happens when I get older? And we hadn't realized that the pandemic was going to happen and leave us with being unable to live in our tents or travel. And so we were back in the UK with no home and no job, no traveling, no talks, and I was 61. So there comes to that point where you have to make a decision how much you're going to put into travel and how much you think that when you come to a certain age that you can cope with not having.
Yeah. But I leave you with 2 quotes, although a cliche, are really important. Jim Carrey said, so many of us make life decisions out of fear, disguised as practicality. If there's something that you really want to do, I promise, if it's something that's new to you or something that's scary, you will find 1,000 legitimate reasons why you should wait.
there's one reason why you shouldn't, because tomorrow is not promised.
And that was the turning point when Simon had his bad accident that made us suddenly think again. And then when he had his next bad accident in the Amazon, that made us think again, we're going to continue. And that's why we carried on until 17 years.
You can earn money and you can set your goals on collecting stuff, and stuff's nice. Nice bikes, nice cars, it's nice. Or you can take that money and you can go and collect experiences. You can go and collect new friends. And you can go and collect things that people cannot take away from you. And if you're really lucky, you get to do it with your best friend. Sorry, I meant master. Your master.
I'm saying, look at you, my best friend.
I'm her second husband. If she says third time lucky, I'm just leaving. Do we have timetable questions or do we need to vacate?
We actually do. So we have 2 questions, very quick ones. Yes?
How long did you stay in each country on an average, where you stayed for a long term? And was 17 years all a one-way journey?
Yes.
I heard the first part.
17 years is one continuous journey. I did go back to the UK for a very short trip back home, but that was when my father passed away. So I returned for that. Apart from that, no, it's one continuous journey. The other one is, how long do you spend in each country?
As long as the visa
as
will
long
allow.
as the visa will allow. Never ever overrun a visa, regardless as to what people say. It is not worth the hassle, and you may never be let back into that country again, so it's not worth it. So if a country like Turkmenistan would only allow us a 5-day transit visa, so we had to get from Uzbekistan into Iran, across Turkmenistan in 5 days. 3 of those days, I got severe food poisoning and I couldn't ride. So we had to cross Turkmenistan in 2 days. So it really does depend. You can buy extensions. Sometimes it's too much hassle and too much money. We extended.
You had an Indian visa for 6 months.
Yeah,
So we ended up travelling for 5 months and 15 days because you always want to give yourself some leeway in
Bit of
case you're
leeway.
ill. The bike breaks down because the consequence of overstaying is severe.
So yeah, we almost had a full 6 months in India, and then we had to leave. So in Australia, we actually had 11 months. We had a 12-month visa. Again, we stayed 11 months just in case there's an issue.
It's a big country.
It's a massive continent, Australia, and so it varies as to where we are in the world.
Alrighty. We will do 2 questions, the gentleman up here and 1 person at the back.
So hi, so 17 years is quite a long time to being together. So in initial state there will be much of differences of opinion. Fighting must be there on the roads. So what is the mantra of being togetherness for so much period of time?
How do we stay together for so long without fighting?
So he was asking, what is the mantra in terms of, like, what magic do you do for you all to stick together for this long after sticking together, for traveling 17 years back to
Okay,
back?
so unusually, I'm going to give you a sensible answer. Because obviously I have a sense of humour. The sensible answer is, there's 2 things that I think are absolutely important. One is to remain true to yourself. I've seen too many people fall in love, and they have a great relationship, and then one of the 2 people start being dominant, and then the other person concedes regularly. And finally what happens is being 2 people that used to love each other, they're now just a couple, and they've lost and forgot who they are. And if you lose and forget who you are, how's that other person going to remember what they loved about you? So we argue all the time. We row. I mean, we argue so badly where I lose my voice. Lisa will never say sorry. I will be pulling out her toenails. So she's not a saint. But at the end of the day, the friendship we have is simply based on a level of respect. So one of the reasons I love giving presentations is I get to say really stupid stuff about how much I respect my wife, and I actually mean it. I don't respect her as my wife, but as a person, I know what she's capable of. I know what she's willing to sacrifice. I know her levels of loyalty. and I know the kind of person she is. And that's the foundation of my relationship to her. Now, there's a very good chance that everything I just said, she's going to make a joke out of. But yeah, that's
No, I won't make a joke. It is important to keep your individuality, and also when you're on the road or when you're doing something maybe a little away from your norm, is that you know what your strengths are. Simon never tells me, go and do this, and I never tell him, go and do that. You find your own forte, you find your own path.
Don't let arguments fester. If something bothers one of you, discuss it, get it out, row about it, move on.
You might
If
want to
can't move on.
You might want to go away and hit a few sticks and rocks and smash them up and things like that.
She's very violent.
And then calm down and then come on back, because there's something much more practical. Someone's really laughing here. I don't know who it is.
No, we're not laughing at it.
Whether we fight or not. That's what I wanted to ask.
Well, that's the other advantage. I cannot imagine spending 17 years with me on the back of her bike, because she's sure as shit isn't going on the back of mine.
I don't trust you enough.
Well, that's
So-
really excellent.
We're getting relationship advice along with travel advice, which is fantastic. One last question for the night. This gentleman has one.
Were you guys riding every day? Or if yes, then how much kilometers? How much kilometers are mine?
Riding every day.
Yeah, we had times when we didn't ride every single day because of accidents or illness or just fatigue.
Sometimes it is in such a beautiful place
Yeah.
that you can't do it justice just by arriving at the end of the day, camping and leaving again the next. Usually we are moving on all the time. Sometimes we'll go into a city. Don't like going into cities, but sometimes we have to go into a city to get documentation or a stamp that required from the government, whatever it may be. So when you ride into a city, we'll usually spend a couple of days just because, well, we're in the city, make the most of seeing the beautiful buildings and understanding why the city is there. When we're actually riding and we're going on the go all the time, it's a job. You get up in the morning, you pack, you ride. You stop along the way, you eat, you meet the locals, you take your photographs, you stop, you repeat. Especially in places like Mongolia, where it's quite a big country and you've got a lot of ground to cover. And at that point, there were no roads.
We had to ride every single day. Mongolia is exactly half the size of India, but its population is 1/400. You guys have 1.2 million citizens. Mongolia, half the size, 3 million. So it wasn't just the terrain, but without those people, you don't have the infrastructure, you don't have the roads, more importantly, you don't have the fuel or the water. If you've got people living there, somebody's got fuel, somebody's got water, but if you have nothing, so Mongolia is also one of those countries where you need a GPS. Because if you get it wrong, and you go 4 or 5 hours in the wrong direction, and you're low on fuel or water, that could very well be a very deadly decision, because there's nothing coming to get you.
So that also does depend on the amount of food and fuel and water mainly that you can carry with you, and can you afford to stay and enjoy where you are for an extra day or two? You can't if you haven't got those facilities to
At
pick
the
up.
end of India Bike Week, we have 3 days on a beach over there, just to soak it up. Motorcycles open a door to meet fantastic people and have great conversations.
So you have to
put
give-
the side stand down and then have the conversation.
That's a very important part. You've got to give yourself time to enjoy where you are. Because if you don't enjoy where you are, what's the point in being there in the first place? So that's something that we've held with us during our entire trip. Try to make time to stop, relax, breathe in, meet people, enjoy the local scenery and the culture around you. Otherwise, stay at home because you're not seeing and enjoying anything.
Alrighty. On that note, we're going to give them a massive round of applause. Lisa and Simon Thomas, thank you so much for being with us here at the big trip presented by Golf Sintrack. It's an absolute pleasure. And such a lovely couple. Make some noise for the couple on stage, yeah? Thank you all very much.